these companies that went into these spaces before because they had capital challenges, issues, problems, decided that they would. Okay, sorry.
I'm so
Mike
sorry.
told me not to use the word challenges
I
on this
did.
thing, and I'm not sure how many times
We're trying to get 1% better every day.
That's right. That's it.
And
1%.
This
Anyway.
podcast is going to get 1% better by not using the word challenges.
That's right.
All right, David, welcome. How are you? We are
I'm
in the
great.
nurturing
Thank you, Michael.
biosphere of the Data Center Hawk mothership.
Yes, we're here.
Safe from hopefully any health concerns.
That's right.
Knock
Podcast
on wood.
number
23.
23.
23 and me.
Number of Michael Jordan.
Oh, yes.
Number of a famous movie with Jim
That
Carrey.
apparently no one saw.
That's
Famous
right.
company, 23 and me,
That's right.
of DNA
That's
testing
right.
fame.
Come on.
So, not to jump in the coronavirus PZ too much here, but we have seen, a couple people asked me this week about a conference down in San Antonio Data Center World. Are you still going to go?
Yeah.
Just word. And then there's been some conferences that are canceled.
Sure.
It's like Google and Apple and Microsoft are canceling their big deals
Yeah.
in the next couple months. So there is an impact,
Sure.
but I just, what do you think about, is there any impact to our industry other than, some of these conference disruptions?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably it. The reality is it's impact, everyone. And so I think the industry will probably ebb and flow just like other groups will, or other companies and industries will be impacted. So, obviously you got to probably prepare for the worst, hope for the best. And, it sounds like
It's a
people
strong strategy.
Yeah, companies are doing that, and probably some are more because they're larger and maybe they have more risk or going to spend more time focused on it. But yeah, so certainly something to be watching for, and obviously hoping that people are okay.
One thing I thought of is that a lot of these companies are saying, hey, work from home if you can, et cetera, et cetera. That could kind of serve as like a stress test for certain networks, as everyone's like, a lot of meetings are going now virtual meetings. So It may be interesting to go, we realized we weren't as prepared for the demand spike as we thought we were. So
Sure.
We shall see.
Yeah.
What else is going on?
Just we're focused on, our beginning of the year has been extremely busy in a good way. We, are growing our platform to include other markets that we've talked about in previous podcasts, but we're focused, really now on the global data center picture, and it's very clear to me and our team that our business is becoming more and more global on a day-to-day basis. So, it creates awesome opportunities for people in the space. So, that's where our focus is right now, and we're just getting after it every day, just
All
like
right.
you in that CrossFit gym, Big Mike.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second, but
It's true. It's true.
just quickly want to just check in on, some of the things we're seeing.
Yeah, sure.
Just give me like a quick bullet. We're almost through the first quarter of 2020.
Yeah.
So just like, hey, take your temperature on some of the trends we've talked about in past podcasts and any changes you see, in those things.
Yeah, and I think like having a reference point on this stuff is really good as you try to pinpoint things like supply deliveries and demand, all that stuff. But anyway, I actually feel like I think first quarter is going to be good just from a demand standpoint. 2018 record-breaking year in the data center space. 2019 we kind of came back to earth a bit, and I think 2020 has started off a little stronger than I anticipated. So I don't think we're going to be breaking a lot of records, but I do think that we're starting to see some trends that point to some larger demand coming back in the market. So anyway, I think all of that's good. We mentioned some of the virus challenges that are out there. I think also too some of the election stuff, watching how that impacts just the overall economy as a whole, will be certainly on our radar. We're watching it. And the other thing and this actually goes down to, we had Corey Dyer in yesterday, who is, Digital Realty's Executive Vice President of Global Sales and Marketing, and just had a great discussion with him. And one of the things that we talked about was just the globalization of our business, as well as the importance of network connectivity and how that continues to, be valuable for the maturing data center user. And so I think we're certainly paying more attention to it because it has become such a part of the strategic direction of some of these companies that are out there. So those are some of the things that we've seen kind of getting into the year as it relates to, things that are impacting the market.
Something that's come up a lot is, again, just the hyperscale strategy of these companies choosing to build or lease. And then I've used the term levers. I'm changing it to dials. That's my now preferred metaphor. They have changing the dial. So anything you've seen on that as far as that would impact 2020 going forward?
No, I think the thing to watch there is just how much of that demand is leased versus built themselves.
Sure. And
I think we've talked about, or we made a note about that in some of the notes down that we'll get to later. But that is really the impact of our space from a data center standpoint. In 2020 will be what happens with that dynamic.
All right.
Yeah.
I want to talk quickly about some of the travel you're doing. So you were in Boston last week. Did you smart pack? Did you pack the cat?
I did. Absolutely. No, that was my favorite Super Bowl commercial, by the way. That was strong, quite strong. No, but yeah, great trip to Boston, and just connected with a number of people in that market. But and that's an interesting. It's interesting to see that market grow and the regional demand that's there, and some of the strategic deployments that are being placed there today. That'll be a fun one.
Boston in a tweet. I'll put you on the spot here. 140 characters less. We're talking old school Twitter, not before they busted out to 280, which is
You're not a fan?
Such a weak move. I don't want to read a novella. I want the tweet.
HSO's on.
I got. You know what?
Twitter.
Jack, let's talk.
Oh gosh. One tweet would be strategic regional demand driven by. I don't know. No, I think it just. I mean,
all right, fair.
No, but I think the demand that goes there it's a more expensive, market,
Sure. Yeah.
and so the deployments that are going there are like strategically located for the businesses that are around that market. So
okay, and they're not pulling in, business from outside of the region. Is that basically what you're saying?
Some, but not a ton. I mean, if you have a bigger size requirement, it's traditionally going to go to markets that are just more inexpensive, unless there's a strategic reason for it to be there, and it makes a difference for your business.
Yeah. One more put you on the spot question. What are the industries that are kind of centered in Boston?
Yeah, there's so biotech. There's a lot of fintech, which I know you like.
Oh, I love that word.
There's there's technology firms that are there, financial firms. So those type of companies are really pushing the demand. Healthcare. Gotcha.
So we got New York City trip end of this month.
Yes.
We'll both be going.
We will.
So you can see our smiling mugs up there.
Get ready.
What are you looking forward to in New York City?
Well, I think, one, we're going to the Data Center Dynamics Conference, and so that's always a great event to connect with people in the space. I think from our perspective, we are continuing to try to learn about the industry. I mean, we certainly feel like we're deep enough in it to be experts, but I think one of the things that if you're a industry professional, it's this market changes so much, you've got to have that learning hat on. And so I'm really making an effort at these events to take the time to actually sit in some of these sessions and really listen and learn. So I think those two things for me are what I'm looking forward to the most.
All right. I'm looking forward to it as well because I'll be going with you. And then last is Europe. We're really trying to get you over to Europe this spring. So talk about what does that look like? What is the time spent in Europe, and what are you going to gain from that?
Yeah, so, we've got people now on the ground for us in Europe, which is great. I think for us, we want to make sure that, the people in that part of the world that are active in the data center industry are aware of what we're doing. And so a lot of that's just relationship building and talking to people in the market, and also to understanding. I mean, it's one of the things that you realize doing this as much as we are now is how different each of these markets are. And, listen, there's difference between Dallas and Chicago, Northern Virginia. There's difference between London and Frankfurt and Dublin. And so just, understanding all that, and just to the people in these markets that we've already had the opportunity to meet with are incredibly experienced, dynamic professionals they're growing the infrastructure base over there in ways that, in a lot of ways that was happening in the U.S. maybe a couple of years ago, and they're seeing, spike in a lot of interesting requirements. So that's the purpose for getting over there, and I'm excited to do it.
Well, cool. We're excited to see kind of what comes out of those trips, and just kind of continue to deepen those relationships with those folks there, and then beyond that, APAC, Latin America, et cetera. So
let's go.
Good times, my friend. All right, so we had Corey Dyer, like you said, EVP of Sales, and is it Sales and Marketing or just Sales?
Global Sales and Marketing. Yeah,
Golly.
Come on.
So, shocker of all shockers, CrossFit came up. He is apparently in the cult. I'm sorry, he's an adherent to the workout philosophy of CrossFit. How did he look? Was he pretty ripped?
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, no, I mean, I'd love to, jump into a workout with him, but yeah, he was in it, and he's been in it for a long time.
Yeah, he has. Like. He's kind of not an OG, but not like he just picked it up yesterday.
Yes,
and that's kind of been your thing now, going to interview people. We do these like data center trips. You're going to find some CrossFit boxes up in Europe to go hit up.
I don't even know how that came up with Corey and I. Like there was no.
Well, this is the old saying. How do you know someone's doing CrossFit?
They talk about it.
They'll let you know.
But I don't I really don't. I cannot tell you. It'd be actually interesting to go back. Well, that was before we weren't filming talking about that. So, but he's in it, man. Just add him to the list. I love it. It's a small group, but a committed group.
Sure.
That's what I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. So we're doing post-production on that, so check it out. It should be coming up soon on the Hawk Talk
and actually
channel.
Yes, talked about it before. It's one of my most favorite things I get to do. Mm-hmm. Sit down with people in the space that are, these are the people that are shaping the industry, and Corey's certainly one of them. And digital obviously is, a company that just their growth over the last 5 to 10 years it's amazing to see what they've done. So
sure, and that was it was a real treat to have him here. Just again, big fish in a big pond.
That's right,
so to speak. So
that's right, kind of like you.
Well,
Mike,
I don't know what to say about that. I'm more of like well, let's not go there. Anyway, so we've got this is a really fun topic today, and I think it'll be educational for everyone.
Yes.
We've brought in our resident data center expert, David Liggett. So hey, welcome to the show, David. Thank you for being here. So we just want to talk about this is kind of an extension of a blog series that we've been doing for new data center professionals, which we call them the Data Center Fundamentals blog series.
Yep.
So you can check that out, datacenterhawk.com/blog. But again, if you haven't been in the industry very long, or even if you have, some of the fundamentals of the industry do change over time.
Yep.
And what was Hyperscale 5 years ago, different today. Retail wholesale line is maybe moving. What people are doing. So this is more of as of right now today, March 5th, 2020. Here's some of the ways we define different data centers.
Yeah.
Some of the different motivations for building them, who's building them, et cetera, et cetera. So we really want to look at the different types and kind of examine them through the same rubric as far as like what is the main purpose that it serves, who is building it, and what distinguishes it from the other types. Where are they going to be built?
Yep.
Both location within a market and where geographically, and then kind of who's owning, operating. I said that, and then what companies will be in those as tenants.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start. with the most common type of the colocation data center, which is what.
Yeah, and actually, what I would add to that is, you brought up the blog series that we did, but the other thing too is, we talk about these in podcasts. So if you listen to our content, number one, we thank you. Number two, we're going to refer to these. So when we say these types of data centers, this is what we're meaning. And when we write about them on our site, this is what we're meaning. And a lot of our research data is gathered, within these certain frameworks of different types of facilities. So I think there's kind of a dual purpose here. One, it's just the educational side of how we're seeing the market and where it's a capital game. So how much money is being placed in each one of these different types of facilities and why. It tells you a lot about where the data center industry is today, and so it's educating hopefully everyone that's listening on how these facilities are different. And then two, it is helping you understand when we say these types of data centers or when we mention them on our site or you see a number that's posted on our site about a certain type of size, it is focused on that type of data center. So
I think it'll be good again just to continue to reset and realign. Terminology is very important. Words are important. Somebody famous said that once.
That's right.
So let's jump in here. First one we call the colocation data center, which is, or also known as the multi-tenant data center,
Yep.
which most frequently when we're talking,
Yes.
this is the type we're talking about.
Yep.
So just talk about, hey, like, what is it?
Yep.
What is the purpose at kind of a high level, and
Sure.
we drill down on maybe a couple different subtypes
Yeah,
as
and we
well.
want to try and be as simple as we can. So we would really define this colocation data center as a facility operated by a data center provider or operator, where companies, end users or tenants can lease power and space. And so we talk a little bit about it at the bottom, but like retail, wholesale, typically the word colocation has referred to smaller type of requirements that fit into most people's definition of retail. But over time, that colocation number has merged to include larger requirements. And so when we say colocation facilities, we are meaning, both the ones that house, enterprise type deals, and then those are wholesale type deals, and those that, size retail or house retail deals as well. So it's really both of those. The facility characteristics specifically, these are typically, now it's unusual to see any of these facilities be built that are less than 100,000 square feet. And so this is just economies of scale and capital. And if we're going to go spend the money, we need to do it where we can at least get, 40 to 50,000 square feet of raised floor, maybe in multiple data halls. And some of those data halls are specifically built for like one customer at a time. Some are subdivided into caged type spaces. So you might have 30 customers in one data hall. Some of those data halls have hundreds, just depending on how small or how big the customers are. But that traditionally is, how you'll see a colocation facility built. 7 to 8 layers of security, perimeter fencing, all the way down to like security at the cage level.
And then, quickly talk about like the redundancy on the power, cooling, fiber side. Like, what is a typical center like that?
Yeah, most of the data center world now has settled into the N+1 at the electrical, at the UPS and the generator levels. N+1 typically allows people to feel comfortable. And then there's typically N+1 on the cooling side, on the mechanical side. Now, depending on the companies, there might be a financial company that says, we have to have 2N electrical design to make this work. And you certainly can make that. You can arrange that. But most of the time, you're in like an N+1 environment.
Okay. And if you look at like kind of a typical metro area, where will these we typically find? I'm talking new builds, because there's a lot of historical stuff. Maybe talk about some of the historical, how we got to where we are today. But within a metro, where would you typically find them? Yeah,
this be typically like I would say in the suburbs. So areas where you can put a bigger like land site together. This just speaks to how young this industry is. 10 years ago, there wasn't great strategy as far as like building portfolios and across the world and how, this has happened over time as companies have realized like, hey, in the early 2000s, there was a lot of capital spent on kind of this .com era that was growing, and then there was the .com bust. And so you had a number of companies that invested hundreds of millions of dollars in facilities that went bankrupt. So a number of companies basically came in, bought these facilities, pennies on the dollar, and then converted them over time, and then started doing it in a, hey, we're going to do this the same way every time so that the data center that you have in Chicago is similar to the one that you have in Northern California, and that's our portfolio. And so when they were doing that led to actually going and building them in different places. And so over time, the best place to traditionally build some of these larger data center facilities where you can actually build a campus is, outside of the city center, just because it's easier to get land. So that's typically where we've seen those type of facilities be built. And obviously in areas where it is so densely populated, you can't do that. You'll see them in other areas. You might see them in industrial areas, or you might see them in like flex office parks that have changed over time, et cetera.
Gotcha. And then who will be typically who developing these?
Yeah. It's been, data center operators or providers. There was a period of time where there were a number of companies that would actually lease infrastructure, like a data center operator would lease from another data center operator. And we've seen most companies move away from that. Now, there's enough capital in the space, there's enough companies that will actually, go build own and operate their own data center, and then they will have tenants come in. You also see there's a number of developers that will actually go and build basically the shell infrastructure and then could sell it over time. But those are typically the two people that are two types of developers that are building the space.
And then lastly, who is typically going to be in a facility like that from a tenant standpoint?
Yeah, it is again, if you're in this industry, it's the retail and wholesale type of data center companies. You might have a really large company that has a network requirement that only takes 2 cabinets. And so it might be a Fortune 500 company like that. It could be a smaller technology company that's a startup that's growing and they have 40 cabinets because they're doing some sort of, gaming system that they've, put out there and that is growing. So it really depends, but these are typically like small to mid-size companies. The larger companies that do have like enterprise requirements, wholesale requirements, these are typically 1 to 4 megawatts. And we've certainly seen that number, those type of deals, quantity of them get smaller over time. However, that's still something that's out there today. In fact, we were just talking, we're seeing like in northern New Jersey as an example, the financial industry kind of, I would say, coming back to where they will actually, they are doing 1 to 2 megawatt requirements now from a colocation standpoint. So it's typically companies like that, but it's all, it's financial, it's healthcare, it's technology, it's insurance, it's, the gamut as it relates to what type of companies. And this is really what has birthed the market that we're in today, is those companies, the healthcare, insurance, all those companies trusting the colocation operators with their data center environments. And that has created, this was happening 2009, 10, 11, 12. The maturity of the providers happening as well. And when you get that all together, now you have a mature data center user that has the power of the platforms of all these providers in multiple U.S., Canadian, European, Asia-Pac markets. And so they're able to really grow their global portfolio with these colocation operators.
And one last thing I want to talk about. I think this answer is self-evident, but I want to put you on record as having answered it. You talk about like a wholesale focus versus a retail focus. And one of the things we track on our site is like the pricing.
Yeah.
And typically retail pricing is, 2 to 3x per kilowatt,
sure.
From a monthly rent space. So you would think economically, you would rather have a data warehouse or a data center full of retail customers. You can just have that much higher rents. And I think I may know the answer to this, but why wouldn't you want that? Or why would they prefer having 1 or 2 larger clients?
Yeah, I think there's a number of reasons. One is, focus. So there's a number of like data center operators that have really made their focus on attracting larger companies to their platform. And those larger companies, sometimes it's easier to get one large company than it is to get 100 small companies. So there's that side of it. A lot of times these transactions and really, if you do this on a daily basis, you know what I'm talking about. But, doing the work to get a customer in that's 5 cabinets can take just as long as getting a customer in that's 500. So, and that's not a shot at either of those. That's just reality of, we're doing business with a company. So, I think that's part of it. And then 2, a lot of times, like, space, power, and cooling is a commoditized thing, right? There's a lot of companies that can provide that. But what the data center operators do differently from one another a lot of times is the managed services, the operational teams, the focus on sustainability issues that customer might have a specific, company value on, and that's why they would go there. So a lot of it has to do too with we're just better designed to handle smaller companies and a lot of them than we are to handle one larger one. So those are some of the reasons that you see some of the differences there.
Okay. And then, last note, where does like the concept of like a retrofit come in here, where a company comes in, buys a building that, like you mentioned, maybe an old telco building or like an old publishing building that typically have at least the floor infrastructure in place, and then they go ahead and put in, a data center there. So how does that fit into what you just described?
This was a trend that was popular 10 years ago. Hey, I'm going to go, where's an old industrial building that I can find and retrofit into a data center? Over time, the data center operator community has become much more mature. They now build, the same type of building in different markets, and there's economies of scale that come with that. And so most data center operators, when they can, would rather build a brand new facility that looks great, that you have a marketing edge over a retrofit facility. It can take sometimes almost the same amount of time, and maybe it's just a little bit more to spend on a new facility than it would be than to retrofit. But, retrofitting a facility can create a number of problems that
anyone who's ever tried to remodel their house knows this.
Yeah, totally.
I just want to take the whole thing down.
Yes.
Just scrape it.
Yeah.
About halfway through the
project.
project.
You got one problem that leads to another that leads to another, and then why didn't we just
floorboards, and now you got mold, and now you got to do the whole thing.
So I think that's where we're seeing that play out today.
Gotcha.
Is that most companies are going to go, hey, we'd rather find the site that we can clear whatever it is and build what it is we build, and I think that's the trend that you'll see moving forward.
Yeah. And again, we've seen companies are still doing that, but you're right, it's on a much lower,
and
lesser scale.
Yeah, and where they're doing it is like locations that like strategically you have to be, and there's really no other option. So think if you had to be in a, as an example, like a city or a area like Northern California, so like Silicon Valley, where real estate is so expensive, it takes a long time to get into the market from environmental and permitting purposes, and so you go, hey, we have this facility, we could go build this, but time-wise, it's going to take a year longer than it would be to retrofit this facility. That would be an example of a market where it might
more
make
like a
sense
shortcut against, like you said, permitting, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, okay. Makes sense. All right, next one is Hyperscale. Ooh, I said it. Bing, Hyperscale count. If you're playing
count the words at home.
Data Center Hawk podcast bingo.
Which we know a lot of people do.
That's the center square, by the way.
That's right.
It's everybody's center square.
Right.
So we're defining this as a hyperscale data center are facilities like colocation data centers, but built on a massive scale.
Yep.
So, talk about that and as far as maybe the different kinds built by colocation operators, built by the companies themselves, because there's kind of an overlap, right? We've got colocation, we've got companies that build and operate their own, and then you've got kind of like an overlap in the middle of hyperscale.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
Yeah. And the thing, this has changed the industry more than anything over the last 3 to 5 years. Has been these large requirements, and it's done. You could spend a whole podcast talking about,
and we have many times.
Check it out. But the capital, how it's changed the way capital has gotten into the space, how it's changed the way data center operators have focused on larger requirements over smaller requirements, how it's changed the way that these 30 to 40 companies that are really the hyperscale companies that need this demand. How they have approached the market, where they want to be, how quick can they get there, how flexible can the solution be. In my opinion, there's 3 things that shape these hyperscale developments: scalability, flexibility, and speed to market. I think that is what the hyperscale user is wanting, and I've oversimplified this, but there are 30 to 40 companies that have very large demands over time, and they recognize, hey, we could go build this ourselves, but it takes X, Y, and Z, or we could utilize people that we know that we've done work with over time from a data center operator standpoint, and they can deliver it. They have the economies of scale to deliver massive facilities and scale it up over time. So what that means basically is when a company has, let's say, a 30 megawatt requirement, it doesn't mean that day one they will have all 30 megawatts. Over time, it might go, they might have 8 megawatts to begin, and then they might, grow into another 6 and grow into another 8 and just get to 30 over a 3 to 5 year period. But you can't do that in a 100,000 square foot facility that only had 10 megawatts provisioned to it, built in 2015. So what this has done, and what are the facility characteristics? These are massive facilities. Mm-hmm. Traditionally, they can start with 6 to 10 megawatts, and then they can grow all the way up to 40 megawatts, 60 megawatts, 90 megawatts, 96. These are high density solutions, so you typically have like smaller data center square footage areas or raised floor areas, but more power is being pulled into this because you have sophisticated users that know how to get densities up to 10 plus kW per cabinet, and sometimes even higher than that. Where they're built in areas where you can scale over time. So, and a lot of these are campus builds. So, if you know anything about our space, Northern Virginia has been a kind of the ground zero for hyperscale development, but it's happening in areas like Chicago, Phoenix, Northern California, Dallas, even Atlanta, and even some secondary markets like Portland. So I think, and I'm just speaking U.S. there, but that's certainly, a trend that we see. The who is building and owning these facilities, I think, is really interesting because it typically is a mix between the publicly traded REITs as well as the private operators.
Yeah, and jumping back to the facility characteristics for a second, how will these differ from if you're an operator, if you're a digital realtor, for example, and you're going to say, I've got a facility over here, and we're going to kind of be focused on or chasing wholesale, maybe entertain some smaller deals in this location, but in this location over here, we're really going to focus on 5 megawatts and up, 10 megawatts and up. Well, how are those two facilities going to differ?
Yeah, I mean, well, one is it can take longer to fill a hyperscale facility because there's less of those larger transactions. So that's one.
So Corey's preaching patience to his bosses.
There we go.
Hey guys, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Promise.
So that's one part. There's the design is can be around thinking through how are we going to scale this over time versus this is all we have to do over this period of time, smaller facility, et cetera. There's some changes I think that the data center operator community has made over the last 5 years related to raised floor being at the actual level at where the cabinets are coming in and not having to push anything up ramps, that you're just unloading things from at the loading dock and you're coming straight onto the raised floor. There's been things just with door heights and thinking through hey, how can we make these bigger so that moving the equipment around is easier in the facility. So some of that is you think on a large scale basis, you're doing things to the facility that is going to facilitate the ease of that type of demand. So those are some of the things that you see.
It really does make sense to me if you think of it like a house. If you think I'm going to build this house and I might put a second story on one day.
Sure.
You would do things differently. You would run the electrical differently. You would run the plumbing differently. You might put in, reinforced walls or studs or footings or whatever the case may be. So it sounds like that's kind of what you're describing at the data center side.
Yeah, and you think about these hyperscale facilities as it relates to, think if you were building that house and it was one story and then you said, no, you know what, we're gonna actually add a second story. The cost, you can do things on the front end if that's the end vision versus if you don't and you make that decision, 5 years in, it's a lot more costly. And so I just think there's a very reasonable approach to the way capital is being spent on the data center provider side. So if you're in the investment world, you just need to know that when there's a 1 million square foot data center campus built, it's not really going to be built that year. It takes time. And there's a level
Once again, anyone who's ever tried to build a house,
it's just,
they know the pain.
It's a level of responsibility that the industry has today with capital. And so I think that's one of the characteristics is it's just built out over time.
Sure. All right, next I want to talk about the enterprise data center, but I'm going to come back to hyperscale. So as we talk about companies, private companies who are building a data center for themselves to use only, how that's going to look, and then talk about what does that look differently for the very largest hyperscale users as they're building their own data centers.
So this is, we would define that enterprise data center group as those that build, own, and operate their data centers themselves. So these are strategically located and really designed and built to meet the demand that a company has. These can be purpose-built facilities that are very strategic for an organization. These might be, 20 cabinets in the data center area at a corporate office building. But these are traditionally, the owned assets of a company from a data center standpoint. There was a study a year and a half ago that a company did, and I forget which company, but it's basically saying that, hey, 65% of a company's production data center still lives on site on their own premises today. And what they were trying to show is just there's still a big opportunity for those companies getting mature, doing hardware refreshes, whatever it is, to then actually come out of that into something like colocation or cloud or a hybrid or approach of the two. So, these, I would say, the interesting characteristics about these facilities today, is they were built to accommodate the market in different periods of time, different technologies, different types of UPS systems, different types of generators. And so most of them are outdated.
That's what we've seen is you talk to some of these companies, the companies we most deal with are the public, the guys who are providing public colocation, where they talk about some of these IT migrations and just the nightmares and the horror stories I've seen. Some of the stuff was put in the 80s, 90s. And so I think of it again back to the house example of DIY versus a contractor who knows what the code is. He's got insurance, and he's going to build things to a standard. Whereas if you just do it yourself, you go, well, it kind of makes sense to me. Drill a hole in the wall, poke the wire out. So, I think you're right. The quality, the infrastructure is all over the map. And they may not care about 2N+1, or they may not even know what that means.
And
they just plug it in
And there are some that are on the more sophisticated end, and they're their own facilities, and these are, buildings and data center infrastructure and architecture that is very sophisticated. But most, I think, would fall into that category. Most too are underutilized, meaning most companies over provision what they need. This is pretty normal. A lot of our industry, you've got to make decisions on things that you know that day, but on things that are unknown. And so a lot of decisions are made out of over provisioning power, what you need. So you have these facilities that were built 10 to 15, 20 years ago. They're a bit outdated. They're under provisioned. And so companies are kind of looking at themselves going, hey, what are we going to do with this? It's one of the reasons we've seen these sale leaseback opportunities come back in the space, where a data center owner or operator will come and buy a facility in Dallas that a bank owned before and they're not using because it's over provisioned and it's older, and they will go in and basically keep that tenant for a period of time, or that customer, and then sell the additional power and space, hopefully, to end users that are in that market. And so it's very strategic. They're hard, from a real estate perspective, they're hard transactions to put together, but they do allow some advantages for the data center operator and the end user too, because then they can actually get cash for what it is that they built however long ago.
Yeah, so which companies, if any, and speaking of which, I want to plug this real quick. The panel you hosted last year with Jonathan Schildkrau and Raj.
Oh, yeah, Raj and Abner.
Yeah, and Abner. And they had talked very candidly about the financials of a sale leaseback. He said a lot of these companies, they've invested like $20 million a megawatt in building these places, whereas the going rate today might be in the 8 to 10 range just to build. And so they're going to take a bath.
And it's a hard, you have to have the right people with the right mindset to do the deal, because there's a bit of humility that you got to,
Yeah, you got to swallow your pride there. So once again, similar to the house. I built this house with my two hands. Well, sir, I've got the appraisal number here. Anyway, all right, so talk about which companies, if any, are building their own data centers today, besides Amazon, Microsoft, Google, et cetera, like top end, which I do want to talk about in a minute.
Typically it's a smaller number. I mean, this was a bigger number in 2004 to 2007.
Sure.
Then the capital markets went bad, and companies, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to go spend, CFO, can we have $70 million to go build this facility? He went, what? Hold up. And it became a CapEx versus OpEx decision. So do we want to spend this money outright, or do we want to spend it over time? And most companies chose that. At the same time, the colocation, both wholesale and retail industry, was getting much more mature, much more better. And so now the companies that traditionally had built their own decided, hey, this actually is better than what we were doing before. And it gives us flexibility over time. After 5 years, if we don't want to be in this facility, or, we've got changes to our architecture, whatever it is, we can get out. So typically it's a smaller group that's doing this. You might see some financial companies do this sometimes. You might see technology companies do this. But heavy regulatory or compliance needs can push companies to do this, or companies that have had a bad experience with colocation. That's the other thing I would say is, if you are a company and you just had a terrible experience, you would go, that will never happen again. We are going to own and operate our own infrastructure. And so that can be one of the catalysts to building and owning and operating your own infrastructure as well.
Yeah, and let's talk about for a minute the companies that are the notable ones.
Yes.
Amazon, Microsoft, whoever, who are building a lot of their own data centers now.
Sure.
So they're one of the few. Again, it's not the same as a bank or a healthcare company. It's very different. But, how are those going to differ from multi-tenant, like just from like an infrastructure standpoint? How do those look differently? Do they have, are they 2N? Are they 4N? Are they 6N? I mean, what do they look like?
Sure.
Their own requirements, if they're the only ones they have to answer to.
Yeah.
On the design side.
Sure. I mean, I think obviously those companies are very smart, and they have very well put together programs that identify what works best for their what type of applications that they are housing in those type of facilities. So it's hard to say what each one of those is doing, but I think you certainly can identify that they are replicating at some point the same type of playbook in one market that they are in another, and it all ties together with their greater portfolio. So if they are building, owning, and operating their own facilities in certain markets, there's obviously a strategic purpose for that, and it's designed specifically to house applications that benefit them alone. Yeah. Whereas a multi-tenant site would be very differently designed, with the goal to attract many different types of companies.
Yeah. And I think about even down to something like putting locks on cages, which you wouldn't need if it's your own.
Sure.
But you would, and obviously multi-tenant if there's 30 customers
Yeah,
in
just
there.
different
little
security
stuff
levels,
like that.
how
Yeah,
you...
exactly.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. All right, next one, we're going to take a little bit left turn here. Talk about carrier hotels.
Yeah.
And again, they're a very unique and integral part of this whole ecosystem. Yep. So what these are buildings that are highly connected and act as a primary internet exchange point for all data traffic in that market.
Yeah.
So there's typically one, maybe two in a market. And so talk about, again, they're all very unique buildings. A lot of them are old, like the Western Union building in New York, which is a very cool building. So anyways, talk about some of those. How did they come to be what they are today?
Yeah. When I get older than I am today, I was going to say when I get old, but then somebody would say, you're old. When I have some time.
Age is an attitude, by the way.
I think that's good.
You're not old unless you feel old.
Gosh.
You're as old as you feel.
He's just rolling out with quotes today.
Put that on it.
I think like one day I really would love to write something, a book or something that highlights these type of buildings because the history behind them is really interesting. And the one word that you should associate with carrier hotels is ecosystem, and this is why because these are buildings that have fiber providers, network providers, interconnection points. I mean, these are densely, like highly connected buildings that the ecosystem, the value that brings to these buildings it's even hard to quantify. And it's why a lot of these buildings, if you're trying to take a cabinet or two and put them in one of these buildings, you're probably going to pay more than you would if you put it in a building that doesn't have quite as rich of an ecosystem. And all of these buildings, as I mentioned, I mean, these are located typically in downtown areas where there's a lot of power, a lot of fiber, so a lot of connectivity. They're typically multi-story office buildings or like industrial buildings that were built almost like 100 years ago. Some of them that have been retrofit to house data center infrastructure. And I'm going to give you some examples.
Yes,
so,
lay it on me.
Just a couple of markets, like in Dallas, and if you're in the data center space, you know this, but like the main carrier hotel is the Infomart, 1950 North Stemmons.
That's a great name, by the way. It tells exactly what it is. It's the mart where you buy information. That's it.
Well,
it's very straightforward.
So
I appreciate that.
It's owned by Equinix, but not a lot of people know this, but it was built by Trammell Crow. And right next to this, he built basically the Market Center, which was designed to bring like fashion and retail into Dallas into one spot. And so right next to that, he built the Infomart, which was designed from a technology perspective. And in the 90s and 2000s, you had a lot of telecom companies come in there. That ecosystem starts to grow. And, come to 2015, 2016, 2017, that is the place where everything is connected from a Dallas perspective. Chicago, the main carrier hotel in that market is 350 East Cermak. It's owned by Digital Realty. So this was a building built in 1912. And housed the printing operations of a company called R.R. Donnelley. So again, massive infrastructure, put in the building a long time ago, grows over time. Telecom industry comes in. Los Angeles, the main carrier hotel is One Wilshire. So this is owned by GI Partners. So this building was actually built in the 60s. Multi-story, downtown office building, begins to house, different companies like law firms. And then when the telecom industry took over in the, 90s and 2000s, it is one of the most connected buildings on the West Coast. I mean, it's amazing to walk through that building. Boston, 1 Summer Street, was actually there last week, owned by the Markley Group. This is just a massive building, downtown Boston, highly connected. The companies that have chosen to go into that building are, some of the world's largest, financial companies, technology companies, insurance companies. Toronto, 151 Front Street. This is owned by Allied REIT. This was built in the 50s to hold the telegraph equipment. So there's just a ton of infrastructure there. So all these buildings, strategic. If you go there because you need to be there.
Sure. And talk about, how companies will typically put like a point of presence or some connection to those Infomarts, or I say Infomarts, into those carrier hotels.
Yeah.
I'm from Dallas. And then kind of pipe some of that traffic out to the suburbs where we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Their main kind of location is.
Yeah, as the carrier store, as the connectivity story has become more mature in these markets, now you can actually connect from a dark fiber perspective from a facility that might be 10, 15, 20 miles away into these areas that have a lot of connectivity. So what that has done as made even those buildings more strategic now, because you can put larger deployments in one area, connect back here, cross-connect to other providers. I mean, there's so many different topologies that you can run from a connectivity standpoint. And you can't just go and, hey, let's build a carrier
So I was going
hotel.
to say, you talk about a lot of these buildings have such a unique, storied and long history.
It takes a
So what would it take to build one? I mean, again, not hypothetically, but like, are there companies that are trying to build the next carrier hotel?
Yeah,
are
there's
there
some
any examples of that you can think of?
There are some, but it just takes a long time. I
Sure.
mean, so because you got to get fiber providers in the building, they have to grow customers, different networks. And so the companies that invested in this a long time ago are the ones that are going to win here. It's going to take a long time before true competition can really take place.
All right, so lastly, we want to talk about the edge data center. Again, once again, if you're playing data center bingo,
Ding, ding.
get another one. So talk about the edge data center. So let's define it first. And in our show notes, we don't even have it really defined here. So talk about, how do you define the edge, knowing that that's
the
probably
industry
a
doesn't
moving
really have
target.
it defined yet.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
The edge of what?
Yes, the edge.
What's the deal with the edge?
The goal of the edge data center classification is really to provide data center services to where the end user is. So these are designed to really solve network connectivity issues. So they're typically smaller facilities or products built throughout the region, to serve a smaller area.
So the extreme example,
Yep.
your iPhone is an edge data center. True or false?
Depends on
So that's
Sure.
where this gets. It's a spectrum.
Absolutely. So yeah, some people would say it's not a geographic location.
Sure.
It's more, where the solution meets the requirement.
It's got
basically.
storage though,
You
compute,
bet. Sure.
transmit.
You bet.
We got them all.
So these are typically, focused on housing smaller deployments. There have been some, when I say products, these have been, solutions built by companies that are typically 10 to 20 racks between 150 kW and 300 kW. And you can, put them in different places, N+1 to 2N at the electrical level, just depending on, the company and the customer requirement. But they're different than the traditional data center development, because you're not saying, hey, it has to be here. You are more flexible with where you can put these. And they can be placed in multiple locations. So we've seen a lot of these be placed where there's heavy population densities. We've seen some of these be placed at the base of cell towers. We've seen that some of these be placed at a company's facilities, kind of like a smaller data center deployment. And several development companies are working on this right now. You also have some data center operators that are either developing their own version of this or partnering with some of those private companies that could be good partners moving forward. I mean, the fact that we know this, that content companies, cloud companies, these are the ones that truly want, that value this, because being close to the eyeballs is, really important. And the closer you can get and the faster you can deliver your services, the better. And when you do this, it unleashes a whole new set of opportunities on the market, like autonomous cars, like, different things with AI. I mean, there are so many things that a more mature network can provide businesses and consumers today, and that's what the edge really represents.
The primary use case we've heard is that self-driving car, where you have a data center in one location. Hypothetically,
Yep.
it houses all of the geographical data for the basically
Yep.
range of its own cell tower,
Yep.
and then the one over has that. So as the car's driving through that area, it gets information for this block
Yep.
from this data center, next block
Yep.
from that, on.
You got
So
it.
that's, again, we think there's a lot of opportunity there, and so it'd be interesting to see how that grows. And I think it is probably where the data center market was, 15, 20 years
Yeah,
ago,
sure.
with respect to maturity and people knowing what exactly it is.
I agree.
So, all right, David, thank you very much, data center expert. Again, we hope you found this helpful. Again, this is a lot of stuff that's contained on our blog,
Yeah.
datacenterhawk.com/blog, in the Data Center Fundamentals series. So anything to tease about coming up next?
No, I think just Red Fuel, or our team needs to make sure that we've got the links below that could point people to different things that we're providing. But no, we're excited about the end of this quarter to see how growth and supply takes place. So other than that, thanks for listening, and we're excited.
Stay tuned. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks.